Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying till the last session. It's been a long day for everybody, but thank you for attending this panel discussion. So for today's talk, I would like to invite, first of all, Professor Dr. Helena Leibelt. She's the founder and CEO of the Institute for Future Technologies. And she actually founded the first HPC QC courses which have gained very high demand at the Deggendorf Institute of Technology. So thank you, Helena, for joining us. Next, we have Professor Dr. Martin Schulz. Of course, Martin is a full professor and chair of the Computer Architecture and Parallel Systems at TU Munich. And he is, prior to that, he held positions at the Applied Scientific Computing at Lawrence Livermore National University and also Cornell. So welcome, Martin. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Professor Dr. Junaina Beilner. She's the owner of Beilner Consulting. She's a medical doctor, MD, PhD, with 2 decades of experience in healthcare space, and she has received training from prestigious institutions such as the Medical University Hospital Hanover and several other universities in Singapore and the US. So Junaina owns her own consultancy focused on learning and education in the field of digitalization and innovative technology. So welcome, Junaina. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
And last but not the least, we have Max Heberlein, who is Senior Partnership Manager at IQM and also my colleague. And he has a strong background in physics. Max has worked for several years at WMI, and he was also in the part of assembling the first quantum computers. And he's now recently, in the last 3 years, focused on the launch of IQM Resonance and recently in the partnership teams as well. So welcome, Max.
Thank you.
So for today's session, our topic is from hardware to advantage hybrid infrastructure as an enabler for industry adoption. So for starters, what does that all mean? We know that quantum hardware is not enough on its own. So what do we need? We need integration with high-performance computing and also the ecosystem around it. So to set the stage, I would like to start with you, Helena. So what do you think, from your perspective, because you've worked in academia and industry as like both together, what is the most critical areas that we need to develop, and what are the gaps that still need to be addressed for industries to adopt this hybrid quantum classical setup?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, and actually, thank you very much for staying with us this late. I know you're longing for your evening and chats, but I think this is a very important topic. So thank you for being here. When we think about the next steps and the issues we're facing, the first thing I'm telling my students actually is, well, we've been there before. If you think about like 50, 60 years back, or even a bit longer, we used to have those huge computers, and you, I'm sure, know the pictures, how it looked like. And now, if you look into the labs, quantum labs, they look kind of similar, right? So we faced those challenges before. We know we need to integrate. We know we need to miniaturize. But there are also some more issues that we need to address. And those are a bit different. So one of those is basically orchestration and scheduling. So this is one of the issues I think it's one of the challenges that we are facing today that are not on everybody's radar, not as much as I think they should be. So basically, if you don't have the QPU, you know, the scheduler does not see the QPU, the industry or the enterprise will not see it as well. Right? So this is the issue. So we need to bring it back or bring it closer to the system itself. And I know our friends from LRC are doing quite a fantastic job in offering that. Right? So you need to see the QPU, you need to make that usage accountable, and you need to be able to bill for it in the end, right? To make it actual manageable and to scale it. Otherwise, it will stay in the lab space, where I'm sure it is fine, but we need to expand from there, get it out of this shiny lab and bring it into the actual factual usage. Portability and intermediate representation. So this is the other challenge, and I know everybody who has ever written a line of code for quantum systems knew about this challenge. Again, we've been there before. Second World War, development of various compute systems in parallel. So again, we know how to do that. For us today, we have plenty of different systems and plenty of different technologies. Unfortunately, they come with their instruction sets, they come with their specific hardware and how to program them, which makes it a bit difficult for our students and actually all the professionals in porting one code from one system to another. So this is something that is slowing the progress down and needs to be addressed. So we need to level it up, if you allow my computer games terminology, to bring it to the more practical usage, all right? So the next one is integration and reliability. Again, bring it out of the labs, and here I'm speaking about SLAs, so bring it to the HPC level, let's say. And we're great at HPC, we've been doing it for ages, we know how to do it. So now we need to move the quantum systems to the same level. And there's a huge bumpy road ahead of us, I would say, in actually being able to do that. And I'm pretty sure the co-panelists will probably agree with that. It's not as easily done as we would wish for it to happen. And one last thing is the standardization of the compilers, right? And the predictability. Right? So adoption only can happen if you have your systems being predictable, the usage being predictable. And again, we have good examples for that. You're doing a great job at LRC. I know France has been doing quite some wonderful projects on that. So things are happening, even though not as fast as we wish for them to happen. And I think the speakers before us, they mentioned the quantum supremacy in like 5 years. So I think we need to speed up the efforts a little bit.
Okay, great. And we've talked a little bit about the foundational elements, but in your view, how do you see like Europe's readiness in terms of technology and skill in comparison to, say, the US or Asia?
That's a good one. So if you look at HPC, start from that, I think Europe has been leading in the software space. And our colleagues from Munich Quantum Valley, and there are some in this room, they're doing an excellent job in actually making this happen for quantum as well. Right? So having the leadership in HPC, and we are great at that. Germany is actually really leading the pack, right? And has been for ages. So they are bringing the quantum space into the same leadership space. China is leading in the educational area. We have to admit that. They have been doing an awesome job. And if you look at the quantum programs, they rolled them out in large scale. And the US is obviously leading in the hardware department.
Okay. So from the foundation, this brings us directly to the integration question. And how do we actually bring quantum into the supercomputing centers of today? So Martin, I'll move on to you. You've been at the forefront of integrating quantum with HPC, and both at TUM and LRZ. And so what do you think are the main technical and organizational hurdles that make hybrid HPC quantum systems ready for industrial use? So what do you think, how close are we to overcoming these hurdles?
So I think we have made huge progress over the last couple of years in kind of bringing this together and trying to build these hybrid systems, but I also think there's still a lot to do. I'm not sure we can pinpoint a particular point in time. Kind of connecting to a panel from earlier today, I don't think there will be a Q day when we start doing this, but will be kind of a sunrise, is what it was called in the other session, to kind of build this up over time. But I think we're getting there, and we're seeing more and more use cases where this is starting to become interesting. From a technical perspective, I think you have to see this as multiple layers. One is bringing it into the center itself and putting it on the floor, particularly for tight integration, what we're trying to do. And at that point, it really comes into the area of working with facility management. They have never seen these systems before. They really hate when you tell them, no, there's a gas tank sitting there next to your clean rack, and how to combine these things. So that's where also the organizational issues come in, right? There's a different training required. There's operational manuals, different processes required. We still don't know what the environment really needs to look like for these systems. So what is good and bad for different types of qubits. So we're trying to do a lot of monitoring. We need to understand this. I think we have done good progress in monitoring that and trying to read out these things. But now comes the analysis part still. I mean, we're still in the discovery phase there. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to come. Then the next level is connecting them together. I think we also here we know the different options on what to do. But the question now comes, which use case fits best to that? And I think as industry comes up with more interesting use cases, we can see what fits to what and what is the right choice coming up. That's kind of the hardware side. But I think the biggest challenge is actually lying in the software side. And Helena, you already mentioned part of these software issues. This is, I think, a lot of the core work that we still have to do in really bringing these two worlds together into a common software ecosystem. So resource management, as you mentioned already, is one of the key issues. At this point, we're actually leaving the quantum world. This is a computer science issue that we have been targeting for 50, 60 years with a new twist, a new aspect to that, but we need to solve this here as well. And then high-level programming also, how can we make this palatable for HPC users who don't think quantum or are not quantum physicists? What are the right abstractions? I think there's a huge challenge still to solve there. But I think we're getting there step by step.
Great. And also, I'm sure you meet a lot of end users and from the industry. And so from their perspective, what capabilities or assurances do you think they are looking for? And what is holding them back towards exploring like hybrid quantum HPC capabilities right now?
Well, I think a lot of them are actually curious and are trying to explore this and at least slowly find out what they can do. I think there's two main things. One is the obvious thing, which we always hear. Quantum systems are too small at this point still to really solve any real problems. So that, I think, takes just time. We see the trend in the quantum systems pretty amazing, actually, which growth rate we have in this. Just looking at the IQM systems, for example, there, and all the ones that we have at home, the growth is just amazing that we have this. I think it's just a matter of time. But the second thing, what we also see with the industry partners is not just how big of a problem can I solve, but how can I integrate this into the stack? Can I connect my custom library, my custom solver to this new kind of thing, and how do we make these connections work? So we actually work with a couple partners on just how to duct tape these solutions together. There's a proof of concept, and once they have that, they become suddenly much more interested and say, oh yeah, I see this can work, and then how can we explore this further?
Okay, very interesting. And like now moving on, of course, Martin, you've highlighted the integration challenges, but if you had to talk about exploring like one of the application fields like healthcare, and that's really has a very high potential use case of quantum computing. So Janina, as a healthcare leader and AI biomedical engineering professor, so how might hybrid quantum infrastructure reshape healthcare? And particularly like in drug discovery, imaging, diagnostics, etc. How do you think it's going to reshape healthcare?
Well, first let me add, I've heard education and training. You in the industry part with your students, for you it was a facility management. The same is true basically in every industry and industrial segment. I'm now coming from a healthcare background, but how many medical doctors would you know that also know at least a little bit about quantum? Because quantum is not quantum, and you need to know which quantum technology you are using to solve or to address which challenge. So this comes now to the various challenges that we would be able to address with quantum in healthcare. So first of all, I would go with probably quantum annealing because we are quite advanced there. Think of a hospital logistics department and how many orders they have per day and how to optimize their logistics chain. And we do know there is quantum annealing companies out there who help you already now to optimize your logistics. And now let's do a step further, and please bear with me, yeah? But we do have many, many patients. What differentiates a patient from a spare part or a syringe? I mean, you also need to schedule patients. You have a workflow that you need to get your arms around. And this is a tremendously challenging, a tremendous challenge these days, because we do know that there is not enough healthcare professionals taking care of the patients. We are in the midst of this demographic shifts. Population gets older, much older. On the other hand side, COVID has accelerated the decline of numbers of people who are willing to work in healthcare. We do not have enough nurses, we do not have enough radiologists, surgeons, etc., to taking care. So also here, how can we optimize the resources that we do have by making sure the scheduling piece, having the right treatment for the patient, is set in place. And then it comes also, of course, to individualized medicine, where quantum computing could add value. I think this is the next piece then, very important. You have quantum computers, and we see that, for instance, at Cleveland Clinic, where they are using quantum power, quantum computers. We have talked about the quantum advantage in hardware in the US, Helena. Imagine in their entrance, they do have one of these huge quantum computers, and they are using quantum already to find the best treatment path for their oncology patients. And they have published already the outcomes and how you can improve clinical outcomes for an individual by using quantum intelligence to find the right treatment for the person. So those would be I would say, major use cases that we could think of. Plus, and this is coming more and more into perspective, because healthcare is really touching all of us. In one way or the other, all of us are patients. Most of our lives has started in a hospital, right? And we do have siblings and friends, and also our parents need health, and they will need health more the older they get. So also here, it is very important that each and every individual understands and not fears the power that quantum could bring to the healthcare system. I think that is also, again, education. And I'm not sure who of you have seen the panels beforehand. There was the hype curve, and oftentimes people also get scared. If there is anything that they do not understand, they get afraid and they push back. We have had that in AI a couple of years before. People are afraid of artificial intelligence. Is it taking over the world? Stuff like that, because the broad majority did not understand what is happening. The same is true with your personal data in healthcare. I do believe there is only little things more important than your personal health, and also the data that you are producing, and who is owning those data, and how can we make sure that all our health data is also cyber secure. So I'm talking about cyber secure communication. If you think about an integrated healthcare system from your GP to the hospital to rehab, and then maybe to elderly living, how do you make sure that your electronic health record is cyber secure? So also the cybersecurity and the encryption, I believe, is something that really gets into focus in healthcare in the upcoming years, the more advanced quantum computing gets.
Thank you. And of course, you touched a little bit on personalized medicine, but going deeper into that, what do you think in terms of building trust with hospitals and researchers? Like, what do you think needs to happen to build the trust so that they are able to adopt these technologies, the new technologies?
So again, one of my backgrounds is education. I think it's really a lot of communicating, educating patients every one of us should understand what is happening with the data and why is it important that those data are transparent, at least for you and the people you want to share those data with you. And then it's really success stories. You've got to prove that if you share these data, and we have it now in the European health data space, we really try to pseudonymize the data to make sure that we find the best treatment for each individual. This is only possible if we have this data lake that we could analyze. We are using quantum computing. We do have now also a setup in Europe for genetic databases. I'm not sure who of you has done this genetic testing to get your own individualized risk profile of how prone you are to develop one or another cancer, to make sure that you prevent disease. So showing the advantage for an individual, why this is important and why you should use it, not to become sick, to stay healthy, and there we are touching also the topic of longevity. I think this is really important to convince people what is your own benefit to use it and also to share it, as said, in a safe space with people that you want to share it with. So in my opinion, it is important that you as a person, as an individual, you own your data and you decide what happens with these kind of data.
Yes, and from adoption, we have to move on to usability. And of course, Max, you have worked very closely with hybrid infrastructure, and you see it in action today more than anyone else. So especially with NISC systems, what are you already seeing as like meaningful advantages for users, and what does that look like in practice?
Mm-hmm. So let me answer the question a bit with a story, how we actually came up with the first hybrid NISC systems. I think this is also closely connected to your work, Martin. I think 2 years ago already, we had a scientific group of Peter Coveney doing work on one of our quantum computers together with the LSE. And it was, at that point in time, absolutely surprising and very, very positively surprising for us that the results of this work were actually quite interesting. And so it was, we had small systems back then, and nobody expected, hey, we're going to see something coming out of that. And so it was some work basically studying the fast proton exchange in water, and that is really also interesting. This might be interesting for you as well, for how neurons exchange basically information with a larger brain and so on and so forth. So this is really meaningful research. We said, okay, let's push Peter Coveney and his group, and let's do the best we can to support this group. That was our reaction to this. And then we quickly found out that in LSE, secretly, basically this was a massively complex process, basically, bringing the quantum information to classical code in a technique called embedding and basically processing it back. And this made us wonder, and I think the MQV has then really taken the next step from that and developed something which is called the Munich Quantum Software Stack. And this was, I think, the first attempt in generalizing a bit how hybrid workloads can be really pointed to the right hardware, as you said, also the scheduling to some extent. But of course, this is a research project, and the timelines are a bit challenging for us as well. So I have to confess, and that is why, for example, then with MQSC, the Munich Quantum Software Company, we did a quick track a bit and did a solution on our system, which is just one part of the Munich Quantum Software Stack, which is QDMI, which basically allows the quantum computer to be a scheduling entity for schedulers like Slurm, which is very common in the HPC world. And this is basically how we then developed sort of a standard. And this is, I think, how we should go towards these problems. Really see what works and then directly put ourselves on top of that and try to find standardized solution how we can really exchange the workloads between the HPC bulk and the quantum computers. And I think in this case it's worked really well, and same things are also happening in Oak Ridge, for example, as we speak. They also have now this QFW software stack, and I think a big challenge we all have to, or we all are facing, is that we have to align, I think, what is really the standard we want to push, what is really how we can use our resources most efficiently to build basically a common solution which everybody can use and which is open in the end. Yeah, and that's maybe a bit longer answer to you.
Well, it's perfect. But as we move from today's NISQ era to and this era of like loose integration with HPC towards fault-tolerant quantum computing, like middleware requirements are going to change, as I assume.
Yes, unfortunately, dramatically. And so maybe to explain a bit, so NISQ is the current noisy intermediate scale quantum area. And we do arrows with quantum computers when we run algorithm, and we accept this to some extent. And we just say, okay, you can just run an algorithm of a certain depth. And afterwards, if you go further, then basically your result is just noise. Now we are moving into the so-called FTQC era, which is fault-tolerant quantum computing. And this is a major paradigm shift. Because also, I think for many HPC players I've talked to, this is basically just a utility, which is added to the quantum computer, and then suddenly you have the same software processes over and over again. But this is not true, unfortunately, in my opinion, because what we already see is basically that the stack from the quantum computer sides gets much more complex, and the quantum computer moves basically into a heterogeneous compute system, where you have the lowest layer, which is then the QPU, then you have a layer which is basically the FPGA and RF SoC, and then you have an additional layer which is real-time operating systems, which are connected quite tightly to the quantum system as well and support microseconds latency, or up to microseconds latency. And then afterwards you also have the HPC center, which is still very important to the whole story, but now the user has to have access to all these heterogeneous compute layers. And that is really the problem. So how do you allow a user basically to put code on an FPGA? That's not easy. It's a process called synthesis, and if you get the voltage levels wrong, the whole thing is fried afterwards. And these are problems to come. Also, how does a user then schedule, for example, in Slurm, when the decoder for the real-time feedback loop, which is required for quantum error correction, is a variable suddenly, right? It's something the user really puts on top of the maybe real-time hardware or something like, or even the FPGA. And how are we going to predict the timing of these systems? This is very complex, and I think this is a major challenge, but I see this always positive, so let's work on it, and this is coming soon. So as we speak, I think multiple companies are developing the QEC stacks, so this is something I think throughout the next 1-2 years we really have to face.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on the challenges of the AI decoders, like potentially like AI-assisted decoders?
Okay, I guess I have to explain a bit on that first. So what is a decoder? For quantum error correction, what we do is very simplistically, we sort of use a complex code which somehow resembles the classical parity check in a way, let's say. This works in a way that you have more qubits than you really need for your code, and these qubits produce a syndrome, we call that. The syndrome is then transported to some decoder, and the decoder can say, hey, the syndrome was basically read out in, or was done right, let's say, or wrong, and then we need to basically take another branch in my decision graph how the code should run, and this branch is then executed instead of the main branch. Now, we've seen in the past, Google has done some great work, for example, on an alpha qubit, but also there are some independence papers coming out that these decoders work also very well with an AI assistance. Basically, it's a messaging interface for these graphs, and that is replaced by AI tooling. Why is that interesting to us? First of all, because the accuracy of these decoders is pretty high. But next to it, we are also very worried about scaling behavior of these decoders. So typically when you have a decoder and you just add more and more qubits, the depth of the decoder algorithm is getting larger. And that means it takes longer to execute. So we are developing superconducting hardware. We have pretty strict timelines to keep for this real-time loop. And that can be really problematic. The advantage of the AI-assisted decoders is that to a large extent, they don't scale in the depths of the algorithm, but they scale in the parallel direction. So they can actually use more and more parallel processes. You know, that's the power of GPUs also for AI. To scale. And that is why this is so interesting to us. But this also means, and now I have to cut myself a bit short, that we need the facilities to train these decoders. And that is not easy. For example, we had a paper in June which said they used a month workload really on one of the most modern GPUs for training these decoders. And this is a small-scale quantum system. We will get much larger systems in the future. And we have to prepare for this. We have to really prepare in the way that we build the integrations like we already do, but also keep in mind really the QEC era is coming, and we need to also have the right tools for that.
Okay, and we've heard all of you, and we've heard the foundational elements that we need to set up hybrid infrastructure, the integration challenges, the healthcare use cases, and now also what hybrid quantum HPC looks like in action. So for the last segment, I would like all of you to share, of course, starting with you, Helena. What do you think, looking forward to 2030, what will hybrid quantum infrastructure look like, and what impact do you think it is going to have?
Actually, I would like to address a very important point. We are talking about the hardware. We're talking about the programming models. That's fine. I would like also to add, we need to talk about education and people, because the major question and the major challenge we're going to face is basically who's going to do it. And that's a big one, honestly. And also, I've been coding for 30 years, right? And I can tell you, with each development in technology, right, we had accelerators, we had multi-core, we had, many other things, and you have to adapt. And quantum is significantly different. So it doesn't matter which technology wins in the end, and there will be consolidation, obviously. It will be different. So we need to train our young generation on the next upcoming technology, and also the domain experts. That's the other one, right? The medical doctor, I'm happy they're doing the medical work they're doing, and they don't want to touch the coding. They're not very good at that as well, right? Also the physicists, if you ask a physicist about programming something, they will probably say they can do it, and they will, exactly. It's not going to be pretty though, right? So we need to make the next technology easy to handle. They want to do the research, they want to, do the medical work. They don't want to care about what's beneath it. Mm-hmm. So this is, I think, something we need to touch, and, maybe you want to add to that.
Of course. Martin, do you want to add? Of course, skill gap is a major challenge that needs to be addressed, and anything else?
The physicist.
No, I completely agree. I think that the skill gap is something we do have to address, and from the programming side, from the administration side, and from the user side, across the spectrum, basically. Coming back to your original question, 5 years in the future, unfortunately, this is actually not that far, right? I mean, if you think about what time it takes to actually buy a cryostat these days, so it is actually, I don't think we will have the revolution in those 5 years, but I think it will become much more commonplace. We'll have first use cases. It will look like something tangible at this point. I think, coming back to your point, I think we'll see a really nice integration with the AI world as well. Because, yeah, quantum for AI is one thing, but the direction that you mentioned, AI for quantum, I think will become even more commonplace. We'll see this also in other areas. If you predict trajectories for readout or predict some of the anomalies in the systems and things like this, I think this can be really helpful. So I think we're going to see infrastructures growing together there. And then I think the main thing will be that in 5 years down the road, the quantum systems in the HPC centers will not be longer these exotic things. They'll have become a little bit more commonplace. We've gotten used to them. Facilities management will have gotten used to them too at this point, hopefully. But I think it will be kind of normal. Also, when we look at them, the trade shows, there's now in the HPC trade shows, there is a quantum corner, right? This will no longer be the case. It will be just be folded into the HPC portfolio. So I think at this point, we'll just have this as another technology that we can really use and starting to use at a large scale, looking 5 years down the road.
Yeah, hopefully that's all going to be true. So, and for you, Janina, what do you think? What's going to happen by 2030 in this hybrid infrastructure?
So I do see that our VUCA world has become the BART world. So it's even harder to make any prognosis. One topic we have not yet talked about is also defense, where quantum plays a tremendous role, geopolitical tensions. I really do believe we are living in a world where it's very hard to predict even tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Maybe with quantum computers this is possible someday. Yet I really do think that the positive things, and maybe this is because I'm just an optimist, but they will overweight all the potential threats that quantum could bring. I really enjoyed the quantum sustainability topic, because this is really a challenge we will face earlier or later, climate change, global warming, and on purpose I'm bringing this now on a much higher level. Yeah, but there is critical infrastructures and I believe really challenges for humankind to survive, which quantum computers, and this is my personal conviction, will heavily be impacting.
We all hope that comes true. But moving on to Max, what do you think? We have a roadmap, of course, on the as a quantum computing vendor, but what do you think is going to have the most impact from hybrid quantum infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it's definitely quantum error correction. So by now, actually, I think we don't really know, first of all, which quantum error correction technique will prevail and when. This is, of course, always difficult. Still, I think we are moving into this era very fast. So give it 2 years, I think, and then we will have the first logical qubits of a feasible system. So, you need more than one, of course, which allow running algorithms more or less in infinite depth. And that will change the paradigm quite a lot. So I think then we will see the first quantum advantage dips, let's say, or events, and they will get more and more over time. So I also believe in this quantum sunset or sunrise. Sunrise is a more positive version, I guess. But it might come sooner, it might come later, nobody knows, in fact. One thing I want to go into is, I think, also this skill problem we have in the quantum world. And this is, I think, not only solvable by education. Education is a key part in that. We need people skilled in quantum. We need people skilled in low-level programming. We need skilled people in healthcare, and so on and so forth. But the amount of skills you have to have for really running the whole system is getting more and more. So what's the resolution to this? I think the resolution is to build open ecosystems where multiple people can participate and really work together in a constructive way. This is also, by the way, I think one of the strengths we have in Europe. And we should build on this basis, I think, to get forward with solution where, for example, we three can sit in a room and build on a board basically high-level solutions and then go to the people and integrate them and just try them out. I think that's the only way, because you cannot be an expert in everything after all. But I don't want to mitigate the efforts, of course, for educating the people with the skills. But I think this is also a key part. Yeah.
Okay, so building hardware alone is not enough, but we need an entire ecosystem, basically, to see any kind of quantum advantage in the near future.
Well, not necessarily, I think, for having the quantum advantage. I think there will be individual solutions everywhere. But the point is to find the most valuable solutions. It's not enough that an industry expert, for example, like you, Janina, sits there and thinks about these solutions. We need to get all in the room together and really discuss until our brains don't explode, hopefully, but are at least having a hard time for for this evening. And I think, that's the way we have to go forward to find the best solutions for quantum advantage.
Perfect. And we're almost at the end of the session, so I would like to ask the audience if they have any questions for our panelists. Okay. If not, then I would like to thank Martin, Helena, Janina, and Max. Thank you so much for participating in this discussion. Today we learned a lot of great insights, and thank you to the audience for staying till the last session, and enjoy the rest of the summit, and thank you so much.